What up? I'm B, and welcome to my channel where we talk about all things true crime and current events. Today is another episode of what I like to call Crafty Crimes, where you and I sit down together, we talk about something related to the true crime world, and we do a little crocheting at the same time. Recently, I did a poll asking about President Donald Trump in America. He has officially been impeached. And so I asked you if you wanted kind of an unbiased explanation of what all that means, and so many people said yes, so that's what we're going to do. Before we get into the video, I want to just kind of make a general disclaimer and ask you for something. This video is not going to be about my opinion. I am simply going to explain what's happened, explain the facts as best I know them and as accurately as I can, and just leave it there. This is for you to be able to understand what the process looks like and what is going on in this country. However, I do encourage you to share your opinion if you feel so inclined. If you have an opinion on what's going on, if you have a prediction of what's going to happen, if there's something you want to say about the situation, absolutely feel free to leave it down below. I would love to hear it. I do just ask that whatever you say, it is said respectfully. I do not want any comments with malice, with vicious intent, anything just really overly harsh or disrespectful. And I understand that this is politics, and so people are going to be very passionate about it. 100% I understand, but that is just not, this sounds so cheesy, but that's not the vibe that I want for my channel. I want it to be a place where people can come, they can feel safe to express their opinion, and they're not going to be attacked, and they're also not going to be spreading anything hateful. So, that is just my request, please. Obviously, you can say whatever you want, but I would just really appreciate it if whatever you said was said with respect. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into it. So, impeachment. What is it? It is an American right that was outlined in Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution, and that section says that the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes or misdemeanors. So high crimes and misdemeanors is a very broad phrase, and that was done intentionally by the framers of the Constitution. They didn't want an impeachable offense to be limited by what was defined to be illegal at that time. It was really phrased that way because it's meant to describe anything that goes against the people's trust. Any federal official can be impeached and removed from office using the same process as the one that I'm going to describe right now. So in America, we have tons of different federal departments that are responsible for running different parts of the government, but the two, departments are going to be the upper and lower chambers of Congress. They are the ones who really run the whole impeachment process and decide if someone is going to be removed from office or not. You have the lower chamber, which is the House of Representatives, and the upper chamber, which is Congress. So the lower chamber, the House of Representatives, it is made up of 435 elected officials, and they are elected every 2 years by their own congressional district. And a congressional district, it's not like a city or a state, it's not defined by any lines like that. It is based on population. So you have these weird borders that outline these congressional districts, and each one has their own number of representatives. It varies based on the population, how many that congressional district gets. But they elect their representatives, and then the representative's job is to look out for the best interests of their congressional district. Part of doing that is having powers of oversight and investigative responsibility. So basically, if any member or any multiple members of the House of Representatives think that a public official has done something worthy of being removed from office, they can start the impeachment process. And they can do this individually, or they can do it in the House. So if they do it individually, that means that on their own, they go get information, they get evidence, and they outline kind of these impeachment resolutions saying this is what I think this person has done, and here's why I believe they've done it and why it's grounds for impeachment. So they can do that, and then they can present it to the House, and then if approved, it starts from there. Or the House of Representatives itself, they can actually vote to launch an impeachment inquiry. So if they pass this resolution and an impeachment inquiry starts, what happens is there's a committee that is assigned to investigating the public official and what the House seems to think that they have done. And then when they're done with that, they come back together, organize everything, take a look at it as a whole, and decide whether or not they believe the person that they were investigating has committed impeachable offenses. And if they believe that they have, then they will write up articles of impeachment. After that, they take their findings and the articles of impeachment that they have written up, they take that to the House. They present it in front of the House of Representatives, and then a debate happens. And this isn't like going back and forth necessarily, it's just members of the House of Representatives are permitted a very limited amount of time to give their opinion, state whether or not they think these charges are valid, and that's pretty much it. They can say, yes, I agree with this, here's why. No, I think this is wrong, here's why. And this can take hours, but people are all given their time, their very limited allotment of time to speak and try and convince the other members to see things their way. It's over, they take a vote. And this vote is to determine whether or not they are going to impeach the official. And impeachment simply means to charge an official with wrongdoing. It does not mean that this person is being removed from office. That's not what it equals at all. Impeachment simply means that the House of Representatives has come together and they have formally agreed to file charges against this elected official. However, if they do this and if they agree to impeach the official and this person gets out of it and they remain in office, the impeachment doesn't just go away. It still stays on that they were impeached, because impeachment means that they have had these charges that could potentially remove them from office filed against them. So anyway, they take the vote, and then if the impeachment is approved, the House then appoints specific members of the House of Representatives to take over as case managers from that point on. After those case managers are appointed, the articles of impeachment are sent to the upper chamber, which is the Senate. Now, the Senate is made up of 100 elected officials. There are 2 per state, and they each serve 6-year terms. And it doesn't matter what size your state is, how many people are in your state, every single state has 2 senators. And their job is to represent the interests of the state as a whole. So the articles of impeachment are presented to the Senate, and then the Senate will basically bring that person to trial. In a trial for impeachment, those case managers who were appointed to handle the process, they're the ones from the House of Representatives who are going to be acting as the prosecutors, trying to get that specific official convicted. The person that they are trying to remove from office, they can have their personal lawyers defend them, or in the case of a president who has been impeached, they will have the White House defense attorneys defend them. And the Chief Justice of the United States will act as the judge in the trial, and members of Senate will act as the jury. So there's no randomly appointed 12 people taken off the street. It is all the members of Congress, they all get a vote, and they are the jury. Additionally, the Senate is allowed to discuss and adopt specific rules for the trial, so that can be stuff like limiting the amount of evidence that's allowed, or setting a time limit. They can't completely change everything, but they can implement specific rules if they all agree on it. And depending on the rules that they set before the trial, if the trial starts and somebody wants to make a motion to just dismiss the case as a whole, in some cases they can do that, and they would just basically say they want to dismiss it, say why, and then the members of the Senate can vote to either dismiss the case or continue on with the trial. And in order to dismiss it, they would just need a simple majority, so 51 out of 100 people to say, yeah, we don't want to do this, they're fine. But if the majority votes that they do not want to dismiss the case, then the trial will proceed as follows. Opening statements are given by the case managers from the House of Representatives, and then that is followed by opening statements from the officials' defense lawyers. And like I said earlier, in President Trump's case, he would have the White House lawyers defending him. So the case managers from the House, they're the ones who go first, and then the defense will go. After this happens, senators are allowed a certain amount of time to ask questions about opening statements, about things that this person is being accused of, anything that they feel they need more information on in order to make their decision. They can ask either the prosecution or the defense. And then after that, there is the examination of evidence, and that includes hearing testimony from witnesses, and the witnesses can be cross-examined, just like in a regular court, by the opposite party. When the examination of evidence is done, then closing arguments are made by both sides, and there are 2 members from each side who are allowed to give their closing statement. After this, the senators get together and they deliberate all of the evidence and everything that they have heard over the course of the trial, and this is done in a closed session, so it's not televised, no one is allowed to listen in, it's all done behind closed doors, and they basically come to an agreement, and then after that they take a vote. And so each article that the person has been accused with is voted on separately and requires a minimum of 2/3 majority in order to pass. So say a person is being impeached and they have 2 articles of impeachment leveled against them. Each one would be voted on separately, and say this first one didn't get 2/3, but the second one did, the second one would pass, and that person would still be convicted. It doesn't have to be both. So they vote on each one separately. Like I said, a 2/3 majority is needed in order to either say this person is innocent or say that they are guilty. And if they are innocent, they stay in office. That's the end of it. Yes, they still have been charged with these things, they still have technically been impeached, but they do not lose their job. However, if they are found to be guilty on at least 1 article of impeachment, then they are removed from office. And in the case of the president, if they are removed from office, then the vice president would then take over and be president for the remainder of the term. And remember how I said that the Senate could add some of their own rules to the trial before it starts? Well, they can actually decide before the trial that if the person is found guilty, they would be allowed to vote that this person could never hold an official office again. And if they decide to, put that up for vote, it would just be a simple majority needed in order to get that to pass. If the person is found guilty of impeachable offenses and they are removed from office, that's it. As far as the Senate goes, that's all that they can do. Any sort of jail time, fines, anything like that would be left up to civil courts. So that's the process. And the interesting thing is, before President Trump, only two prior presidents have officially been impeached. In 1868, President Andrew Johnson was impeached for removing his Secretary of War from their position the year prior. And the reason that this was a problem is because it breached the Tenure of Office Act, which basically says that an important federal official cannot be fired or removed from office without prior consent from the Senate. So he was impeached for that, and when it came time for the Senate to vote on it, it was 35 guilty to 19 not guilty, and so they were 1 vote short of being able to remove him from office. And you might hear that and say, that doesn't add up to 100, and that's because back then the Senate had fewer members. So he was impeached but not removed, and then additionally in 1998, Bill Clinton was impeached. He was charged with lying to a grand jury, committing perjury, obstruction of justice, and abuse of power. And all of these charges were related to a sexual harassment lawsuit filed by a woman named Paula Jones, as well as Bill Clinton's illicit sexual relationship with Monica Lewinsky. So the impeachment was voted on, it happened, and when it went to the Senate, he was found not guilty and he remained in office. Now, there was another president who most likely was going to be impeached, but he resigned before it could happen, and that's Richard Nixon. In 1974, he was he was pretty much almost guaranteed to be impeached. He had helped cover up the break-in of the headquarters of the Democratic National Convention, and this was known famously as Watergate, or the Watergate scandal. He had attempted to cover it up, and a bunch of tapes came out basically proving that he'd wanted to cover it up because he was a Republican, and so he wanted inside information on the Democrats. And when those tapes came out, even the Republicans were like, man, like, we gotta do this, dude. So it was almost guaranteed that he was going to be removed from office, and instead of waiting for that and kind of facing the shame that would come from being removed from office, he just resigned instead. And now that we've gone over the 2 presidents who have officially been impeached and one who resigned before he could be officially charged, let's go ahead and get to the 3rd president in U.S. history who has had charges officially filed against him that could potentially get him removed from office, President Donald Trump. On September 24th of this year, the House of Representatives launched an impeachment inquiry into President Trump after an anonymous complaint was made that he had allegedly withheld security aid to Ukraine in order to kind of strong-arm their president, Volodymyr Zelensky, into launching an investigation into Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. And Joe Biden was the former vice president under Barack Obama, and he is also going to be running for president in 2020 next year. And his son Hunter was actually a paid board member of a company called Burisma, which is a Ukrainian gas company, and he held this position while his father was vice president. So basically they're saying that Trump wanted these 2 people to be investigated by Ukraine for corruption, and if Ukraine did not comply and they did not launch this investigation, Trump was not going to give them security aid that had been approved by Congress. Now, Trump has denied these allegations. However, in July, there was $391 million that was approved by Congress and was supposed to go to Ukraine in order to help them, but Trump did withhold it. He, however, denies that it was because of any quid pro quo agreement that he would give it to them once they launched this investigation into the Bidens. Now, the money has since been released. It was released pretty quickly after the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, announced that they were launching the impeachment inquiry. And something that you probably know if you're in America, but you might not know if you are not here, if you live somewhere else, is that Donald Trump is obviously the president, and he is a Republican. And Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, the person who launched this impeachment inquiry, and many members, a majority of the House of Representatives, they are Democrat. So, these are our 2 main political parties in America, and there is a very strong history of these parties just kind of going at it, butting heads, and people within each party blindly just sticking to their side without actually considering, like, humanity or without considering issues individually. It's not about individual issues. It's about what aligns with my party and what keeps me loyal to my party. So just keep that in mind. The Democrats, they do not like Trump, which is not typically abnormal. However, once Trump was elected, almost immediately there was talk of impeachment. So while there's history of the parties not getting along and kind of being against each other, it is a little bit amplified in this case because people have had issues with Trump from before he was even elected. So anyway, the House launched the impeachment inquiry, and now they allege that during the inquiry, the White House refused to comply with subpoenas for evidence as well as witness testimony. And a subpoena is basically just an official order to appear in court. But the House of Representatives say that they did not comply. They did not give the information that they were required to give in order to complete and be cooperative in this investigation. However, there are current and former members of Trump's administration who have said that there may have been some irregular protocol occurring between Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and the president of Ukraine. So the investigation was launched in September, and then on December 18th, the House of Representatives held the official vote. Debates went on for around 14 hours, and they did officially vote to impeach President Donald Trump. He was charged with abuse of power as well as obstruction of Congress. So as we learned earlier, that means that these charges have been officially filed against Donald Trump. So the abuse of power article refers to the allegations that Trump openly and corruptly solicited political investigations from Ukraine and conditioned acts on his request. So in theory, allegedly, that is Trump saying, if you investigate these two people, I will give you this money, but if you don't, I'm holding on to it. You can't have this $391 million, even though it was approved by Congress. I'm going to hold on to it until you do what I want. That is what they are alleging that he did. And then the second one, the obstruction of Congress article, is for the lack of cooperation in terms of the inquiry. Supposedly, Trump withheld documents that the House was requesting throughout the course of their inquiry, and allegedly he ordered specific officials not to testify. And the reason that this would be an impeachable offense is because part of the president's job is to ensure that all laws are faithfully executed, and so if he is getting in the way of Congress doing something that they are legally allowed to do and legally responsible for doing, that's a problem. That is getting in the way of laws being executed. Now, in defense of Trump, many Republican officials are saying that this impeachment process was rushed because the investigation can't be fully complete. Apparently, the courts have not ruled on the subpoenas yet, and so Trump had more time to give them the information or to have people come forward and testify. So the Republicans think that they're rushing into this. They didn't give Trump enough time to comply. They are just worried about getting this impeachment over with as soon as possible. I don't know if courts have ruled on the subpoenas. I don't know. That hasn't necessarily been confirmed or denied, but I am sharing that in an effort to give as much information as fairly as I can. And once again, they do have testimony that alleges Trump did withhold this in a quid pro quo fashion. However, it has not necessarily been proven. They do believe that it is credible enough, though, to file these charges formally against him. So there must be some sort of evidence, because I doubt that the House of Representatives would be that reckless with something so serious that they have been trying to do pretty much since he was elected. They've been trying to get him out of there. So I don't know. It just depends on your own research, what you think, what you can find. So take that information as what you will. In any case, Trump will be going to trial for these articles of impeachment, and it is likely that the trial will begin in early 2020, so it should take place in the first part of next year. Some people are speculating that it could take place as soon as January, but we won't know until they are actually pretty close to starting the trial. And in order for Trump to be found guilty and removed from office, 67 out of 100 of the senators will have to vote guilty on at least one of the two articles. However, there is some doubt on how likely that is to happen, because while the majority of the House of Representatives is Democratic, the majority of the Senate is Republican. And so far, no Republicans have indicated that they would vote to remove him from office, because once again, people in political power tend to support their party. So it's very difficult for a Republican president to be removed from office by a Republican Senate. So when it comes to the vote, they would need every Democratic senator to vote guilty, as well as 20 Republican senators. And people really do not think that that is likely to happen. I think if more information came out, or something that undeniably proved that he had done this and the Senate deemed that it was an impeachable offense, then it could happen. But as of now, no Republicans have indicated that they would vote that he was guilty. So that's the information that we have so far. That's what we know about impeachment as a whole, as well as Trump's specific impeachment. People think that there are a few scenarios that could happen. This is all speculation. None of this is like factually backed. This is what's likely to happen. This is all speculation that I have heard. There's kind of 3 ways that this could play out. First way that the Democrats would really appreciate is they take Trump to trial in front of the Senate. The Senate finds him guilty and removes him from office, as well as barring him from holding any other office in the future, which we know that they can do depending on the pretrial rules. That's one option. He's removed from office. Mike Pence, his vice president, takes over for the next year or so, and then they're done. Something else that could happen, though, Trump's taken to the Senate. He is found guilty. The Senate, however, in this scenario, did not indicate that they would be allowed to rule on whether or not he could be president again in the future. And then he spends the next year going out on the campaign, rallying up the troops, and running again in 2020, and possibly becoming president, because the world is wild, man. Anything could happen. Even someone who has been impeached can be president again. And at this point, nothing would surprise me, to be completely honest. And the third theory is that he goes to trial in front of the Senate. They find him not guilty. He spends the next year saying, it was a witch hunt. They've been out to get me from day one. They couldn't prove it. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm a victim, and gains more support because he's like, oh, the Democrats, they are just coming after me. They don't care about the actual law. It's a witch hunt. He does all that, and then in 2020 runs again and is reelected because he's been able to convince people to see it the way that he does. But that is what the process of impeachment in order to get someone out of office looks like. That's what's going on with our current president, Donald Trump. I know it was a lot of information, so as always, my sources are going to be linked in the description, so feel free to go ahead and use those. And additionally, leave me a comment letting me know what you think is going to happen, what you think about this whole process, and if you feel like it, let me know what one positive change that you would like to see happen in our government over the next few years. And additionally, one quick announcement that I just want to make. I have created a link to a video suggestion form. It's in my description box. I will also pin it in the comments. If you have a video that you want to see, feel free to use that. You don't have to include any personal information. It's just what type of video you want to see, and then a spot for you to put the information, so you can suggest a crafty crimes video, you can suggest a commentary video, or there is a new type of video that I think would be kind of fun to do with you, which is a video series about your terrible 20s, because your 20s are hard. So if you have a situation that you're in, something you need advice on, you want an outsider's opinion on an event that has happened or something going on in your personal life, feel free to click the terrible 20s option and submit your situation or the advice that you need in the box. Then I can read it and we'll talk about it on camera and kind of work through it together. So feel free to use that if you have a video that you want to see. No pressure, just wanted to put it out there. With all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Thank you so much for watching. Please be kind to people, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.